Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Saturday Mailbags. I'm Samson Folk. We're here to talk basketball on a Saturday. Thank you to everybody once again for joining. I guess it's like March Madness, so if you're tearing yourself away from the TV, I hope you enjoy it a lot. Or if you're just playing it on in the background, maybe that's a nice little situation. Regardless, thanks for hopping in. Today we're talking about a wide array of topics, but we're starting with a very specific one that I was asked about by Caleb, who is a very consistent, faithful listener and viewer, commenter. I very much appreciate it. It's about Scottie and OG because it isn't as soon as OG got traded away, we saw a lot of people say, like, when the Raptors want to win a title again in the future, you're going to be wanting a guy like OG on the team. And I'll read Caleb's comment. But firstly, like the video, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff that helps the channel, helps the podcast, I guess. So from Caleb, quote, I keep thinking about the old refrain of if we trade OG away, we'll be looking for another player like him for years, and how incredible it is that the Raptors actually do have another player who is just as impactful defensively or close in a different role. And Scottie's offensive ceiling is higher, even if the fan base is frustrated to begin learning where that ceiling actually is. They're obviously very different players, but I'd be curious to hear one of you experts compare year four Scottie to year four OG. I have a terrible memory for past performance, end quote. Okay. Also, Blake, hello. Hi. This is an awesome question. And actually diving into this was really fun because of the different ways that they achieve things. And they actually, like, looking back, it makes you think quite fondly of Scottie's year offensively. And I just had this piece that came out this morning about how Scottie's mid-range game and the post fades has taken up so much of his offense, why that's happening, what that looks like. You can read that on raptorsrepublic.com after the stream, of course. But when you forget about like all the expectations, when you forget that, Darko called Scottie the future face of the league, when you think about like the rapid deconstruction of the team and building it back up for Scottie's prime, like if you forget the expectations and just think about Scottie as a player, the steps he's taken, they are exciting. And if you don't get too caught up on like first option, or what the him of it all, like all that kind of stuff, he's taking steps. Now, it might not be as rapid or as fast as some people want, but in comparing him to OG, who back then in the Tampa season, which was OG's fourth year, I remember thinking like, maybe you can bet on some of this creation upside, because there were some things that he was doing and he was okay off the bounce. And I remember the one time, like 2019-20 season, I was still doing my every possession pieces, and I watched every possession where OG put the ball down, and he did pretty well. The thing is, these guys are so much different in the play types that they operate in. I'll say that as the big thing offensively before I dive deep into it. But the real crux of this topic is Scottie versus OG as defenders. And so I'll cite synergy here, and synergy doesn't guarantee that a player is better. Like, there's a reason Jacoby Walter, every time I bring up his synergy pick and roll ball handler stats, like he's one of the worst in the NBA. It doesn't mean that he has to be one of the worst in the NBA. You can contextualize this stuff, find reasons to like it, understand why you dislike it. But as far as synergy this season for Scottie versus OG's fourth year, as far as like guarding play types or a wide swath of them, Scottie is grading out a little bit better than Tampa season OG. Now, I didn't go and look at, I guess, the year before OG, where I think he should have made an all defense team. And OG has been doing this for like 5 years straight, so credit to him. But year four against year four, Scottie is succeeding in a larger swath of play types. Like post ups, he's much better. Spot ups, he's doing roughly the same, which is good because guarding a spot up is contesting threes or closing out and keeping a guy from driving all the way to the rim. Like that's a very important play type to be good in. And as far as like pick and roll ball handlers, they're pretty close. It's just Scottie is better in a wider array. There's just one big gap between these two defenders, and it's the isolation defense. As Caleb laid out, these are different defenders who succeed at different things. But as he also laid out, we're looking at two players who provide a ton of impact defensively. And Scottie plays lower in the floor typically. He gambles more. He has access and a little bit more carte blanche to try and be a guy who, I mean, to be a guy who can get stocks and kind of like ramp this stuff up. That is closer to his role. But Scottie's also better at that kind of stuff. Like OG had a couple stretches where he was pretty impressive as a weak side helper, but he just isn't at that level that Scottie's at. And Scottie isn't close to where OG is at as far as like an isolation. You throw him on a guy, there it is. Just turn the water off immediately. Scottie definitely is not able to do that at this point. However, Scottie is a guy who, while not necessarily, I guess, like being able to, once a guy has a live dribble, turn the water off. His deny defense has been really impressive. I see ZOL in chat is upset at the title. It's Scottie versus OG. Now, you don't have to put all the negative connotation on it, but we're comparing Scottie versus OG. I'm not saying OG is better or like, you know what I mean? It's just, it's a comparison point, an interesting one that allows us to talk about their games. We don't have to get too caught up in it. But Scottie's deny defense, which is the question I asked Darko about before Darko said, like, the media isn't doing a good enough job of covering Scottie's defense or highlighting it. And, you know, Koki in chat says Scottie's defensive ascension this year at least helps make this an easier comparison. It certainly does. Scottie, I think, and last year I thought he was truly tremendous, but he was playing mostly weak side stuff. Scottie has played like a year of roughly all defense level basketball. That should mean something to everybody. That should be super, super impressive. That should be, man, that should be something people hang on to. And that is something that the Raptors definitely hang on to. That means something to the Raptors because Scottie, some of it's tied into effort. We see players, young players, third year, fourth year players get into that all NBA all defensive talks, hang there for 2 or 3 years, and then start dialing it back. However, it's, you know, it is what it is. That's the players aren't able to, I guess, maintain that for that long. So as far as Scottie's effort, like he's currently has it at a super high place, and his impact he has at a super high place. And all this to say, looking at the types of defenders they are, Scottie, and that's what we're doing. Like, it's important to listen to what I'm saying. I'm not saying Scottie versus OG. Like, Scottie's made an all-star game. You know what I mean? We're just comparing strengths and weaknesses. As far as like what Scottie's been able to do as a weak side, like defender, a helper, as a guy who gets in passing lanes, as a guy who plays deny defense. Oh my God. He's stepped up in so many ways. And especially with that deny defense has helped kind of sustain his somewhat limited on-ball defense at times. He's helped himself by pushing guys farther back into the shot clock, by moving them farther away on the floor. It's like that effort, size. He's dominant when he's able to, you know, use his body. So that is what Scottie's been able to do. It's just on the other side of things, OG was a guy who never had to gamble. He was just so often always in the right place. His steals, so many more of them came, I guess, like on ball and just poking guys loose. And like even something like where are the stats here? So a good little stat is that Scottie holds guys to 39% shooting on drives this year, which is pretty great. And OG in 2020-21 held guys to 34%. 34% on drives. If you drive on OG Anunoby, you're shooting 34%. And he also forced more turnovers. Like, it's just that is where they're different. But as far as like on the whole, the next handful of years, we could be, and OG got to participate in better defenses. Of course, he was a big part of it. But as far as comparing them defensively now at this point in their careers, we're looking at like, man, there's no reason why Scottie, if this team does turn the corner, can't have the same amount of accolades. It was only one all defensive selection for OG just in his, you know, last full year as a Raptor. But when we look 3 years from now and look back, Scottie could have a couple selections, and Scottie's, like, the history of him as a defender on the Raptors could leap over OG's. That's the type of, impact Scottie has access to. And that's really impressive. That is a sight for sore eyes. And the Raptors have been one of the best defenses in the NBA since the new year. And it's not been super fun to cover because so much of what that's been going on with the Raptors has been like auditioning vets and then trading them away and then more injuries and then G League signings and 10 days and 2 ways and all this kind of stuff like churn. However, it's been really fun to see, like it's just been really fun to see the Raptors try and like hang in defensively, and the fact that Scottie is 100% the biggest motivator for that. Maybe Jakob, because a big man helps seal up a lot of problems, but Scottie has really done a fantastic job of taking that next defensive step. And it's overdue at this point. I have to write like a big Scottie defensive piece, a big film piece or video essay, whatever the hell. But he really deserves flowers, and they've been given by many people. But I think he needs that clinical, very specific, dive into his game to highlight just how impressive it's been. ND says, so basically Scottie can be the GOAT Raptor defender to you in like 5 years. Yeah, man, he could be. I don't think that's too crazy. I think that's perfectly within play. And Caleb says, and of course, OG never had the offensive responsibility. And this is where we can kind of compare and contrast the offense. So OG's 2020-21 season was awesome because he jumped his points per game by like 5 or 6 points per game. And his true shooting percent jumped to 60. Like he had this huge jump in points per game and his efficiency went up. He was like 48, 39, 77 shooting splits or something like that. He was incredibly efficient. And so the numbers here, right? So OG takes that jump to 16 points per game, 60% true shooting. There's no comparison to Scottie as far as like the playmaking realm. None. OG can make the extra pass sometimes when he drives. He can make the lay down. That kind of stuff is fine. It's fine enough. We see it in New York. It's fine enough. You need to be able to do that stuff. However, the spot-up opportunities for jumpers or drives plus transition accounted for nearly 60% of OG's possessions. Nearly 60% was spot-ups and transition. He's just firmly working off of other guys, and he did a great job supercharging things he already had a little bit of success in. He had some pick-and-roll possessions that actually didn't go too badly. His points per possession was okay. It's just low volume. Like Scottie has just way more pick-and-roll volume over however many years. And he scored more baskets off of cuts than he did any on-ball play type. Like he scored more baskets out of cuts than pick-and-roll, than post-up, than anything, right? And we learned, obviously, in the future that OG wasn't able to run pick and roll that well. And so how did he get his touches? By going and getting a post touch. And that's kind of like, man, that's just, he was working off ball and just majorly supercharged everything to get to 16 points per game. And then we're looking at a guy who tried to take steps further as a creator, and it worked out. Now, 60% of OGs are transition plus spot-up opportunities. That spot-up plus transition accounts for just 32% of Scottie's play types this year. So much of what Scottie is doing is creating with the ball in his hands. And so while it's not gone well, there's nuggets of development, things he does now will end up paying off later. How much, we don't know yet, but certainly they will. But it's just like, man, you really have to acknowledge how difficult a job Scottie's had this year. And of course, people thought he would be better than he has been with a difficult job. I mean, like, again, people were giving me crap at the start of the year for not calling him Giannis or Giannis with a jump shot. And people like it, there's a couple comments in the last podcast we released where it's people saying like, well, if his teammates were better, he'd have like 10 assists a game. It's just, people are very excited about Scottie. They want all these things. And so there's these big contrasting expectations. But if you kind of like lose that and just look at him holistically as a player, the offensive leap did not come. And the Raptors, they don't get to be like super greedy and say, okay, we get an all defense level defender and we get the hub of an offense who is the rising tide who lifts all boats. That just hasn't happened. Scottie took more possessions this year and has turned in less points, less assists, and more turnovers. that's a rare thing. It doesn't happen very often. It's been a struggle. And if you want to understand why there's a struggle and what he has to do to beat some of the coverages he's seeing, you can go to raptorsrepublic.com and read my piece on his mid-range, the turnarounds, the step-back jumpers. But that's the Scottie versus OG of it all. Obviously, Scottie is a much, much better player, and I think it's an incredible testament to Scottie that we even get to talk about like comparing his defense to OG's. After year 2, I did not think that would be in the cards because I was still watching OG being like, damn, this guy's incredible. And, Scottie hadn't fully figured out his role yet. And then over the next 2 seasons, Scottie would go on to improve his on-ball defense and certainly how he makes it more difficult for guys to get him on an island by doing early work defensively. And also he had a pretty long stretch of defense where he was really effective as a guy who blows up actions off ball and is a backline sweeper. He's also a really strong rebounder, and it keeps him in close proximity to the rim to help close out possessions. It's just like I'm really impressed with that aspect of Scottie. It's whether or not he's succeeding at the highest level offensively, he's trying things. But yeah, I see in chat there's arguments about Pascal versus Scottie during certain years. I don't like have the arguments you want to have, but those I don't care to talk about that stuff. There's no point. Oh, I'll give you a fun stat. So it's from the piece I wrote this morning. And or I guess wrote last night, came out this morning. But Scottie, so these are the good, fun proprietary stats that nobody gets. So as far as let's see, where is it? Okay, so yeah, so of the 112 players this season in the NBA who have used at least 100 isolations, Barnes points per chance ranks 98th of that group. And so that's obviously not good. His isolation stuff has been really poor this year. But if you've been wondering, he does see an extra body quite a lot. He's the 16th most doubled player of that group of 112. And the really fun stat is that new teammate Brandon Ingram is second most doubled in his 18 or however many games he played this year of the 112. And former teammate Pascal Siakam is third. So I mean, this Raptors front office just grabs guys who are like, are you big? Do you have some handle? Can you create like a little bit? And are guys going to want to double you? Because like having the guy who was second, recently having the guy who was third, and having the guy, your highest volume player, as the 16th is just like so many guys who get doubled. And I remember the one year, I think it was Scottie's second year, I believe Pascal and Fred were both top 20 in not just doubled in isolations, but overall, right? Like these guys, there's something about these Raptors teams where it's like guys are just not paying off the gravity that is being afforded to them. Yeah, that's that's where we're at with that. Fun though. And like even if you go to the post, right? So like Scottie last year was 1.174 points per chance in the post. Big numbers, huge. This year he's at 0.982. And of the 50 high volume post up players this year, he's ranked 31st in efficiency, and he gets doubled the 28th most. And so why does he get doubled more often in isolation? Because he's like, it's crazy to say, but Scottie is not as dominant a post player yet as we'd like to see, just because of the footwork. The footwork just needs to get better. His balance is coming around. It's something like he's obviously working on. But yeah, and this kind of stuff is like doubles. Who's paying this off? The Raptors are like a bottom 6 catch and shoot 3-point team in the NBA. So it's like, if you get doubled and the ball goes out, does it go in? All this kind of stuff. So, I mean, that kind of stuff is, it shows up. I'm really interested to see like how Scottie's offense looks next year, next to Brandon Ingram, and perhaps like a little bit of development from the guys around the team, and hopefully a team that shoots the ball a little bit better. But the Raptors have been the worst on-ball creation team in the NBA. And like as far as off-ball possessions, on-ball possessions, they get tracked. On ball, they have the lowest points per possession of any team. And they're also a bottom 3 pull-up efficiency team. They just have so little juice cooking on ball. And Brandon Ingram, for all the, people have thoughts about his game, it's Brandon Ingram is going to help a lot of that. ZOL says, so draft Jeremiah Fears if you want on-ball creation. We talked about Jeremiah on the last podcast episode. Also, there's a bunch of proprietary numbers there if you're into that. We also talked about a whole bunch of other prospects. If you want anything on Jeremiah Fears. Okay, we will move on to the other questions that have been asked. So this is a good one, Merv, very consistent listener. Thank you for listening all the time. Merv says, Mogbo versus Filipowski. Do you still prefer JMO? LOL. So Merv was constantly advocating for Filipowski during the draft process. And Filipowski has had a way better rookie season than Jonathan Mogbo. Like if Filipowski was on the Raptors, and he's not putting up absurd numbers, he's maybe 8, 5, and 2, something like that. But he is 60% true shooting. He's like 52, 39. I don't know what he shoots from the free throw line. He's been very polished offensively, and especially that last Utah Raptors game, Filipowski looked awesome, right? And Filipowski has just so much more polish, and that's meaningful. I did that rookie report last week, where I talked about all the things I really loved about Mogbo, and especially the defense, but that he may not be able to put himself in a position to ever deliver on that stuff because he's lagging too far behind offensively. And it really is like Mogbo is a huge swing. And I don't want to retread this too much. It's just Merv. It's a good joke because you're up right now. I do see it, Merv. You're up right now. Filipowski definitely had the better rookie season. But Mogbo is so talented defensively. He has been so impressive being able to guard guys. It's like, imagine if that guy could do things offensively. And especially since they're moving him from not a big role, but into a wing role, he needs a lot, a whole lot of development. Bazooka says Filipowski would be a Raptor if Mogbo never met Scottie in middle school. That's funny. And Vegan Grass says not with those off-court issues, he wouldn't. Yeah, Filipowski had weird stuff. I won't comment on it too much because I'll be honest, I didn't go do rigorous research, but just there was a lot of stuff that came out about Filipowski. But to keep it about basketball, Filipowski has showed an incredible amount of offensive polish. And while he's nowhere near the defensive prospect that Mogbo is, Filipowski might be the type of guy in the future that can kind of keep himself on the floor, especially during regular season, 82-game player. ND says destined for Utah. That's funny. But 82-game players are really important. Even if you get played off the floor in the playoffs, it's well, you got to be healthy. Your team has to get good seeding. You need to do all this kind of stuff. Kevin Huerter has helped the team get to the playoffs before, and Mogbo, he hasn't. He's been so impressive defensively, but it's just you need something offensively. I talked about it a bunch last week. There's probably 12 minutes of just talk about Mogbo. But anyway, Merv, yes, you're up. And the tenor of this, I hope people know, everyone gets super tense or stressed about, disagreeing about basketball. And it happens all the time because, I have a platform where basketball is discussed and I talk about it a lot, and people talk out of the side of their neck and get really rude all the time. But I'm here to say, if I'm wrong about something, it's okay to be wrong. It's just basketball. And if you have a take that you had that was better than mine or looks better than mine, rub it in my face, dude. That's fun. It's just hoops. So my friend Nabil asked 2 questions. He said, when will you discuss second round prospects for the draft? And also, can you discuss Jamal Shead since the All-Star break and what has improved? Feel like his deficiencies and areas of improvement have been highlighted already. Okay, so these one is we've discussed second round prospects already, and I think I know that. We talked about Yaxel and we talked about Adu. However, there's how many months till the draft? 3.5. Trey and I have so much path, so much road to get from here to the draft where we can talk about so many guys. And so we'll have lots of room to talk about second round prospects. I think the next draft conversation we're having will be around Trey Johnson and maybe even a little bit more on Yaxel because, well, I think it'll just be the guys that Josh Codenera really likes. And Josh Codenera obviously been on this podcast many times, my very good friend, professional scout. We're looking at that guy and saying like, hey, who do you like? And we'll talk about those players. ND says we're waiting for the CMB discourse. CMB definitely will be talked about. Everyone, I've seen a lot of comments about CMB. So all that kind of stuff. Jamal Shead, and going back to like disagreeing about players, I know so many people disagree with me about Jamal Shead. And that's why I hope I don't sound like a jackass when I say the defense hasn't been good, because I know a lot of people love his defense and all that kind of stuff. But I've been honest, I've been lower on Jamal Shead than I think consensus. And it is because I haven't been buying the defense that much. And also offensively, I still think there's a lot of development there. However, I covered this in the rookie report, is that Jamal Shead has been the most impressive relative to his draft stock. I think he's proven some things at the NBA level that had to be proven, but there's still so much more because being a small guard in the NBA is being asked to be like uber impressive all the time. And you just have to be so good at some things that you override some of your limitations. JD Hunt says his defensive outcomes will get better once he gets the Pat Bev reputation, perhaps. And also that's firmly in play as well. Jamal Shead, after a couple of years in the league, maybe because people love Jamal, all of his past coaches, all of his current coaches, all of his teammates, people who meet him, people will watch him. He's magnetic. He's really likable. He's a sponge. There's no reason why that guy can't eventually be a guy who learns the NBA speed, the NBA game, and is able to channel his clear athleticism and fervor for defense into being, a strong defender. I would love that. I can't wait for that moment when it comes. That's really what I want. However, I don't think the defense has been strong this season. There's no reason why it can't be strong in the future. But offensively, since the All-Star break, since you asked Nabil, he's 39% from the field, 31% from three. He clearly, the softer aspect is that he has a better, I think I talked about this a little bit in the rookie report, but he has a better handle on managing games right now, and he's doing a better job of organizing offense. I know these are kind of like really opaque things to say, and it's hard to diagnose exactly what's happening there, but that is my feel when I watch. That's what I like about Jamal's game, and also his ability to change speeds I think is pretty good. I wonder, because he is okay with that push shot, I wonder if rather than just being a guy who changes speed north-south, which he's pretty strong at, he becomes an east-west change of pace guy. Very interesting to watch him, but he's getting better as a shooter. I think objectively, that's one thing. And secondly, the most important thing is he has an elite NBA skill, more or less, which is being extremely quick. That's kind of my take on Jamal Shead. I love to eat humble pie when players are better. I love when players are good. When players are good, that's awesome because they worked really hard for it. So if Jamal Shead is just way better than I think, that's incredible, and I will cover him adoringly. The same thing happened with Fred VanVleet. Fred was always a little bit better than I thought. Like always, you can go listen to like all of the podcasts that Lewis and I did from like 2019, 2020, 21, whatever. And I was always so much lower on Fred than he was. And then by the time Fred was like in the bad graces of the fan base because of all the, warring over Scottie and Fred and all that kind of stuff, I was like, no, Fred's good. I never thought he was like truly like an all-star level guard, but I was like, he's good. And then people were like, oh, you're a Fred. You're like, this guy loves Fred. And I was like, damn. If the what is it? The Overton window shifting, constantly shifting. Nesta asks, when will you take a look at Rasheer Fleming? In the coming months. I just like, Yeah, we have a lot of road. We have a lot of road between right now and the draft. It's just months. Trey asks, who's been the best rookie this season? This is such a good question because actually I'll keep it short because I've talked a decent amount about these rookies. So I think it's been probably Jamal. I think it's been Jamal, and that's because Jacoby's been too injured. But after this season, Jacoby is the guy I think who has the most potential. But relative to expectations and the fact that Jamal is like at a point of need for the Raptors, he's also leading the Raptors in games played, availability is the best ability, etc., etc. I mean, it's it's been Jamal probably. He's probably been the best rookie this season. I like that surprises me. Um, Rip D Rose says I'm taking rookie Jamal Shead over rookie FEV. I don't care. Rookie Fred was not good. He had a really tough time. He didn't make shots. You're a small guard who doesn't make shots. Like Jamal Shead had a better offensive has had a better offensive season this year than Fred had, I guess, in his rookie season. Joseph Cassidy says, "C will make a Shed head of you yet." Listen, guys, you get to pick one. You get to have me high on Quickly or Shed, and you got to choose right away because I got to start comporting myself um, for this change. Okay. AC says, outside of the obvious, has anyone played at too good for summer league level this season to you? I don't think so. Actually, no, like objectively, no. Jacoby should be at at summer league. Yeah, boo, please, everyone, boo me. Jacoby should be at summer league. Mogbo should be at summer league, and Mogbo should be doing an incredible amount of just like wingy stuff and see if it works. I would even, I might send Grady there. You know what I mean? Vegan Grass says Ochai. Yeah, Ochai. That was the most confusing thing. It was like he went to summer league and he was terrible. He was terrible in summer league, man. He was so bad. And then he was really good. Like, oh, and this will actually transition us into the next thing. But Ochai was really, really, he's been really strong this year at what he needed to be to kind of prove like I get that second contract. I would send Grady to Summer League, partially because I like talking to Grady and I think I'm going to Summer League this year. And I want that team to be as good as possible. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. ZOL says it's because Raptors use Summer League to play kids out of role and experiment. Certainly. They've been doing that for a long time. You know, they were one of the first teams to do the 905. Let's go.
You're there for a cup, huh?
But you gotta get your face in the
Sorry, you need some coffee?
Yes, please. Thank
Coffee
you.
break, you know you've been drinking. Been working real hard.
Thank you very much. This is my rock climbing mug. It's a crimp. You grab it like this.
He needs to practice. Trying to get to V6.
Yeah. So basically the story is we had no coffee creamer, and I woke up late because I was up writing the Scottie piece, and and so there's no coffee. And then I asked the leg, I was like, "Hey, will you like bring me coffee or go get coffee creamer?" And he said yes. He said yes. What a friend. Look at this though. Look at that little crimp on the fingers, dude. That's how you strengthen the grip strength. Rip D Rose says that's the coolest motherfucker I've ever seen. A leg is really cool. That's my best friend. That's my roommate. We've been hanging out forever. Incredible guy. So anyway, the Ochai thing. Somebody asked me. Yes, Trevor Norlander asks, do you expect the Raps to offer Ochai an extension this offseason? And what do you think would be a fair number? Seems like an ideal candidate to lock into a 3/24 to 33 million range before restricted free agency. Okay, this is such a good question because Ochai was really strong to start the season. And also, I'm also of the mind that I think Ochai's defense is overrated, but that's like you pick and choose, man. You pick and choose. But then Ochai was injured for a while, and like AJ Lawson, AJ Lawson was like, I'll score 30 points a game. I don't give a damn. And Jacoby was like fun. But Ochai, because the Raptors are closer to money problems than they probably should be. And that makes the Ochai stuff a little bit like and ha. but I still think they'll end up keeping him around because like I have a friend, I can't say his name because he's anonymous, but he's the creator of Ethical Basketball, who he likes to call, like he said about Jacoby, he's like future 7th man of the year, like Ochai 9th man of the year, like that kind of stuff. Those players are important. And Ochai, like how do you turn your nose up at a guy who, while I think especially like I think the defense is overrated, but how do you turn your nose up at a guy who just comes in and like plays hard and hits threes? Like the stats: 10 points, nearly 4 boards, 1.5 assists, the 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. But the shooting splits: 50, 40, and 69% from the free throw line. I mean, come on, man. That's just clean as a whistle. That's good, clean basketball, man. That's really enjoyable. And if the Raptors can keep Ochai without causing too much trouble, I think, yes, they should try to. And maybe, oh God, I hate doing this because it's not my money and I hate being the pocket counter guy. But I like maybe Ochai could be the first team-friendly deal they've signed in a while, because it has been a while. I see everyone debating in chat about who goes. Like, does Ochai go? Does RJ go? And like this kind of stuff, I said this before, and again, this is not my feeling. This is my reading of the tea leaves based on conversations. This is not sourced reporting, but based on conversations, based on the situation, based on reading of the tea leaves. I don't think that RJ Barrett is prioritized in the Raptors organization the way that the way that like I don't want to say how he feels. I like the way that you would think he is as a Canadian player, as the leading points per game scorer. I just don't think that it's at that level. And I do think, and especially like when it was reported that, RJ was talked about in the Brandon Ingram thing, it's like, it doesn't mean that he was close to being traded necessarily, but just that like it is, it's a representation of like, because I believe that reporting, it's a representation of like, he's not as ironclad here as one might think. And I really like RJ, and I do want to see RJ play with this team next year. I'd like to see it because he's made improvements. ZOL says RJ is a bad archetype because he doesn't play D or shoot the three, albeit his improved on the three ball. Yeah, and you can quibble about this stuff because I think RJ has played better defense this year. He's existed in the Raptors' best defensive lineups. However, he's not strong. You can't make that case. You cannot make the case that RJ is a positive defender. I think that's really hard. And he doesn't shoot the three that well. However, on a limited Raptors team, he's been a really strong driving force for the offense. Guys shoot better when he passes the ball. It's like there's that kind of stuff moving or motivating like impact. It's just if the Raptors are looking towards like, well, Brandon Ingram's doing this and we want Scottie doing this, and with both those guys, Quickly's 3-point volume becomes extremely important. And if you ask them to choose between like RJ's reps versus like Grady, Jacoby plus incoming draft pick, you get into some of that meta stuff, and it becomes like, Sophia Serrano says RJ's a 6th man on a good team. Yeah, I mean, I just RJ can be on a good team because, as ZOL says, like there's archetype conversations. And people like Keon Ellis is a really great example of a guy who's limited, but he's limited, but he's so efficient, and like it could be 8 points, it could be 16, but it just doesn't matter. That type of archetype, Derek White is the Charizard version of it. It's just so important in the league right now, and RJ is not that archetype, and the league gets caught up on archetypes. But players who can do things, they have to be able to find their way in the league, and I think RJ can. And I hope it's with the Raptors, but we'll see. Sophia says letting RJ beat up on second units is his ideal role. I mean, especially since he took this year as a great opportunity to take on more pick and roll possessions, and he's done really well with them. His playmaking has improved to my mind. His catch and shoot 3-point shooting is passable. You want it to be better than passable though, and his driving, while the finishing hasn't been where anybody wanted it to be, the overall process I think has been like pretty strong. To this point, Vin Mack asks, does the front office view Brandon Ingram as a core piece, or are they looking to increase his trade value and flip him relatively quickly for more assets than they gave up to get him? They view him as a core piece. And even the thought process, which I do agree with, of like, getting a player who you think is underrated and then trying to like put him in a system where you think he's, going to be valued and look better. That kind of stuff is smart and good. However, it's hard to trade specific players. That's why like trade talks and all that kind of stuff is super complicated. That's like, I think it was insane to trade Luka, but that's a little bit why the Luka thing was such a fiasco, is because it's hard to like, for a guy like Brandon Ingram, he was available to most of the league across the NBA. Everyone knows how talented he is. Everybody knows the level of shot maker, the level of creator he is. Everybody knows. And teams objectively talked with the Pelicans and said, no, we're not going to do it. And the Raptors were the team that said yes. And they did that not because they think they can pump up his values and then try and put him out to market, because it's hard to trade that guy, because he is not just easy to fit in. He's not just like super cheap. He's not anything. He's extremely talented, but he also comes with a lot of things that almost dictate that you should restructure your team in some way. Not many teams want to do that unless they're getting like an MVP level candidate. Kawhi Leonard, Toronto Raptors, for example. The Raptors believe in Brandon Ingram as a core piece. That's why they went after him, because they do believe in that. Now, is there a possibility that somewhere down the road they can pivot? Of course. You want to be able to pivot away from things if you need to. But they made this decision because they do, in fact, believe in Brandon Ingram as a core player. And yeah, I've covered the Brandon Ingram thing like ad nauseum. I've covered so much Brandon Ingram for a guy who hasn't played a game. I've talked so much about the hypotheticals of this guy's game. And yeah, I don't know what the record is. I don't know what the record is for most like games missed with a sprained ankle. I assume Brandon is coming up on it probably. Sophia says BI gets underrated because of his aesthetics as well. Yeah, that's I think actually, like, as someone who thinks that Brandon was underrated, I think that's true. I think Brandon was underrated. I also think that he gets overrated because of his aesthetics. Although this is a small disagreement, but if you can elaborate, I'd love to see in chat what you think, Sophia. I'd love to see that kind of like walked out, if you don't mind typing that in for me. So P Zeem says, do the Raptors already have a good enough defensive framework to have a strong defense next year, or do they need an upgrade at the shooting guard spot? I mean, well, there it is, right? Like there's the RJ conversation again. God, everything comes up. Because Ingram is there. Do we think Grady Dick would start instead of RJ? That would be pretty surprising to me. And I like Grady Dick a lot. I believe in the upside, but it would be pretty wild if he jumped RJ. That would probably have to be like some serious conversations with RJ between organization and he about like, you're a sixth man now. And some players do that. Like, Malik Monk was coming up in chat, and Malik Monk just, God, that guy, he got paid way less than he deserved, and he played off the bench for forever. And he just was like, I'll do anything for this Sacramento team. You know what I mean? And then De'Aaron Fox left, who was apparently part of the reason why, Malik was there. Cosmo says Ochai can start. You know what I mean, though? But like, let's think about this. How many players play, right? How many players play? If the starting lineup is, let's say, Jakob, Scottie, Brandon, Ochai, I guess, quickly. And how many guys do you want to play? You want to play a 12-man rotation or something? Grady, Rip D Rose says, bro, are we sure Grady is even going to have a spot in the rotation next year? I'm fairly certain he will. Maybe you're being funny, but I think he will. But you have to play Grady. You have to play Jacoby. You have to play RJ off the bench. Presumably Jamal Shead. Everyone loves Jamal Shead. Okay, I didn't mean to sound that sassy when I said everyone loves Jamal Shead. I mean it. I've heard it from so many people. Organization, league-wide, college, fans. Okay, everyone loves Jamal Shead. So, and then you have guys like, Cosmo says that was so sarcastic. I know, I didn't mean it. Like that's a lot of guards / small wings that just have to come off the bench. But I don't know. The structure, like I would be so surprised if the Raptors don't do anything in the offseason. And also there's a top whatever pick coming up too, right? I mean, what the hell? Sophia, regarding the Brandon Ingram thing, says I think the league's coming back to needing medium efficiency scorers to complement more volatile profiles. What Jaylen Brown does for Tatum and Way. This is such a good point. I've said this before. I talked about this with Grady. This is such a good point. I love this point. And it's a huge conversation that I'm not exactly fully equipped to have because you need like big data points. But I agree with this spiritually. Like when I read that, and I've said this before, I agree with that. I think they do need medium efficiency scorers, innings eaters. And especially if those inning eaters are guys who can perform late in games and also can give you a little bit of defense, which hopefully Brandon, brings the lunch pail a little bit. Medium efficiency scorers who take hard shots to help acquiesce to players who are more limited but provide huge value. Now, on a championship winning team, like obviously, as you said, what Jaylen Brown does, Jaylen Brown is like extremely great. He's an all-star. He's still efficient within reason, right? But some teams who want to like get to the second round and want to, work through, get playoff experience, kind of get guys, reps constantly and keep moving up and improving as a team. Those kind of teams always have that type of guy. And whether that guy improves into, let's say, a Jaylen Brown or kind of stagnates and stays at a lower place, that's when you decide, like, do we need a pivot or whatever? But the medium efficiency scorers get too much shit. I totally agree. Great point. Great point. Let's see. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Medium efficiency scorers. Josh. Anyway, okay. So, there was a starred one. Cosmo says, if you could go back in time, would you stop Zaza from sliding under Kawhi, ending the landing spot foul, or call a travel on Harden's first step back? Oh, and thank you for the $5, Cosmo. I appreciate it very much. Okay, so, it's a halo above my head. So what would I do there? I mean, if you go back in time, would you stop Zaza from sliding under Kawhi? I mean, like, as long as Kawhi's he has knee problems, as long as they didn't stem from that, then I'd say, listen, it's just an injury. And I'll tell you this much. Maybe this will upset some people. I'm not calling a travel on James Harden ever. Ever. James Harden is so cool to me. I love watching James Harden, man. I really like James Harden. He's one of my favorite players ever. I feel now, Shea does not grift at all close to the way that James Harden grifted, because James doesn't do it as much anymore. But James Harden, did he grift? Yes. But also, was there a little bit of get good and guard me without fouling? Of course there was. Now, Shea is and here's the thing, I don't think Shea grifts at all. Maybe I'm biased. He goes up, and every once in a while, he takes, contact on the arm and goes up into a shooting motion. Whatever. I don't care. Shea is ripping through defenses, and guys are hand checking. You can see them. They put hands on, they seatbelt him. They say oh, I can't keep up with him. Let me grab him and shake him. That's not fair. Go to the line. Either get good or, you know what? Eat your humble pie. And if you get beat, be beat. Don't grab. And then don't like be like, oh, he's a grifter. If you're grabbing, stop grabbing. Stop grabbing him. And I really feel that way about Shea. Now, James had a little more craft. A little more craft and grifting to his game. But I do love James Harden. I love James Harden. ZOL123 says, who are the NBA prospects to watch on March Madness Saturday? I've completely out of it, dude. I have no idea who's even playing today. So if any of the guys we mentioned, like who did we have on the podcast that we talked about? Like Jeremiah Fears lost yesterday. I guess who's playing today? I have no idea. But okay, if any of Boogie won the other night, so Boogie might be playing today, or that might be in the future. Derek Queen, Kasparis, Yaxel, Adu, Tui is in the NBL, so no, those guys. I have no idea. Yeah, but Boogie, yeah. Scott Lilly says, watching Harden scoop his arms through guys for foul baiting all those years was unethical basketball. In fact, those Rockets teams were a nasty watch. Maybe this is an insight into what I love about basketball. I loved those Rockets teams. I loved watching guys just like have the ball and go get a bucket. Just like flatten out, me versus you, bucket. I was sitting on the couch, absolutely heartbroken, dude. Heartbroken when they missed all those threes in a row because I thought they were going to do it, man. That Chris Paul Harden team, ooh, I liked them a lot. I was a huge fan. So yeah, a bit of an insight into my basketball, I guess, the way I think about it. Is there any other? Okay, VJ, hopeful asks, do you think VJ Edgecombe could initiate offense at a level to insert him into the starting line, given the fact that the Raptors have a solid level of overall playmaking from multiple positions? Not right away. That would surprise me a lot. However, when I watch the VJ, of the guys I've watched, like VJ represents, I think, a very high upside and a pretty strong floor. He impressed me a lot when I was watching the tape. I've seen like a little bit more than a handful of prospects now. And obviously I'm not like a scout who's like has a 60 player draft board or whatever. But VJ has stood out to me. The big guys I've seen so far are actually the first three we did, which is Cooper, obviously. I did like 30 minutes on Cooper Flag, the other week. Dylan Harper impresses me still. And VJ really impresses me. He definitely needs to improve some of the like off-ball defensive stuff. And he can be lazy, but VJ is really impressive. I just don't think I don't think he would initiate a bunch of offense on the Raptors if he was drafted there right away. But I'd be very happy if VJ Edgecombe, and I know Trey would lose his goddamn mind if VJ got drafted. Yeah, dude. Trey would go nuts. I'm gonna take a drink, man. Or actually, quickly, Slomo said VJ missed a dunk last night that would have played on March Madness highlights for years to come. Dude, he almost dunked it. He dunked it almost so hard that it went off the back of the rim. It almost went out of the building. It was like Barry Bonds took a bat to that baseball or basketball. Anyway, I'm gonna take a drink. It's too much talking, man. Way too much talking. Make sure to like. Make sure to like the video. ZOL says, Samson, are we getting a Raptors Republic draft party this year? I don't know. I'll push for one. And if not, I'll just go to a bar and wait and see if the party finds me. I think I hope we do. I mean, all the other years we do it, it's a total blast. And I love doing a podcast from there. And then also seeing just like and having people come talk about the prospects right afterwards. Cause I love cause like everyone, there's the thing, people argue online. Everyone argues online and they're mean and bad. But then you go to these events and everyone just talks basketball and disagrees. And it's like fun and it's good. And people are nice. It's a community. And community is so elite. Speaking of, Rip D Rose says, did you see that Bernie AOC rally yesterday? Yeah, dude. A lot of people. They like, I think they said, now I don't know if they're gassing it, but they were saying like 30K. Jeez, those are big numbers, dude. Vegan Grass says a draft party is required if we get the first pick. I mean, yeah, we did a draft party when the Raptors had the 13th pick. You know, we didn't do one last year. I don't think. No, because I was sitting right here doing a podcast with Trey for the draft stuff. And then ZOL says, I'd be happier getting the first pick than I was when we won the chip. No hyperbole. Wow. Really? That is like that's crazy. Who Oh my god. That's funny. Okay, I won't get too deep into the politics. But I would not pick the first overall pick over let's say a championship. Also, no, I'm not no. When I'm saying people online are rude, I'm talking about like what I see on Twitter. You know what I mean? No, the chat. I think I have a great chat. Every time I go live, people like, yeah, sometimes you guys call me bald. Every once in a while, someone call me a dumbass or something. But for the most part, it's just seems like people who care about what I have to say and respect the work I put in as an analyst. You guys aren't bad in here, but you know, the internet, the wider internet, is nasty business. Caleb says a pick over a chip is literally, quote, a bird in a hand is worth two in the bush, end quote. I mean, I think like I understand it from the one point of view of like watching like if you got to watch Cooper Flag develop and like all that kind of stuff. And the Raptors did get this, like they got the chip after they hired the mercenary, but I don't know, covering that team and watching that chip is just like it's special, dude. And especially, man, the Raptors had one of the best runs ever, dude. And like you can quibble and argue about like the quality of team or whatever. I know everyone likes to say that the Raptors aren't one of the best championship teams of the past however long. Shut up. They are. But also like entertainment value. Wow, they played some games. Every series was nuts. ZOL says, with Cooper, we'll get to win and repeat. I mean, if you could guarantee that, I'd take it. But, geez, those things are really tough to guarantee. I understand what you mean, though. I'd love to cheer for a first overall pick. I mean, I wasn't watching that much Andrea Bargnani. But also, that's a good point, is like, sometimes you get Bargnani. Sometimes you get Bargnani, dude. And Somo says, how many number one overall picks have led a team to a title over the past 30 years? Tim Duncan, LeBron. And this is actually a good point. Not to get too bogged down in this, but I did this at, oh God, I don't know, maybe November, December. It was when, because it was when I was doing my, hey, tanking is a viable option, but it's not a guarantee type of talk. But when I was looking, it's like I think most of the finals MVPs did not win it playing for the team that drafted them. It's just most of the finals MVPs over the past however many years, and the finals MVPs who did, I believe, were not drafted in like the top 7. I guess Curry. And then Jaylen Brown counts. Nikola Jokic was drafted way outside. Giannis was drafted outside the lottery. Kawhi, not his team. LeBron, not his team. I mean, yeah, it's just hard. It's just like anytime I look at this kind of stuff and you try and like step out and look at the macro, like, oh, what's happening in the league? You just say like, man, it's really hard to build a championship level team. It's just incredibly difficult. Oh, that feels like a podcast. Also, Nesta, I saw you in chat. I addressed the Rasheer Fleming thing early on, not for a couple weeks at least, unless, yeah. And then S as the last question. If you had to be cast as a character in a show, what show would you like it to be and why? Maybe like it has to be an ongoing show because I can't just retroactively put myself in something. I mean, you could, But if it's a movie, I'm in Dune Messiah, dude. Make me one of the Harkonnens with, you know, all right, I'll shave the beard. Yeah. Let's see. If it's a movie, Dune Messiah for sure. I mean, we got Paul walking out in the desert. Or I guess I won't talk too much about that because it's technically a spoiler. Dune Messiah would be the movie. The show, man, I'd love to be like a revolutionary on Andor when it comes back. Could be pretty fun. Uh, Diego Luna, the GOAT. Um, I think that would be really fun. Also, maybe A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. I love those books. They're definitely not as like severe. They're a little bit more like accessible for like young like kids, I guess, than like the game A Song of Ice and Fire series has been. But I love A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, like those books. And I would, because they're shooting that now, I'd love to be in that. I'll just be a guy. I love to just be a guy. I guess that's probably it, right? Yeah. What show would you like it to be and why? Yeah, I'd like it to be that because it's cool and I'll just be a guy. Cosmo says, isn't there a show coming out this year? Yes. I'm so excited for it. That feels like a podcast, right? We cleared an hour. We cleared an hour. We are the kings of yapping and typing in. Caleb talking about Jose. Yeah, dude. Uruguay. Big shout out. All right. Make sure to like the video before you get out of here. Subscribe if you haven't and you enjoyed it, because there'll be lots more stuff like this in the future. I think in Raptors media, for sure, myself and Trey, we go toe to toe. We kill anybody else's draft analysis. We have the proprietary, we have the film, we have it all. We sit down and we talk about prospects. There'll be a lot of that coming up. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I appreciate you all very much. Whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.